Hello, and welcome to Taboo Talk with Sarah, the podcast that breaks the silence, fosters hope, and talks about the tough stuff so you never feel alone. I'm your host, Sarah Jordan Ross, and today's episode will be one of those conversations that sticks with you long after you hit pause. We're diving into life after death, or rather, what happens when you brush up against death and come back forever changed. My guest today is Robyn Wilson. She's a piano teacher, a mum, and a woman of deep faith who had a near-death experience that reshaped her life. We're talking about those spiritual moments that no one prepares you for, the questions you ask when everything else falls away, and how music, faith, and surrender became her lifelines. Robyn, thank you so much for joining me. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate your time.
So let's start at that moment where everything changed for you. You shared that you had what you called a half-dead moment. Can you take us back to that day? What happened and what do you remember feeling at that time?
Yeah, so I actually didn't know the seriousness of the situation. It all just started, so it was Tuesday, the 6th of August, 2024, and I just had lower abdominal pain. And I just thought it was going to go away the next day. Then a couple of days later, I was preparing for music competitions, local music competitions. I had my daughter doing up to six items in one, and it was just a big weekend. And on that Thursday night, I was thinking, how on earth am I going to actually be able to get to the competitions the next day and accompany her on stage? She was going to be singing with a friend because things just started deteriorating during that time. And so I used, you can use Facebook for good or evil. And during my whole experience, I chose to use it for good. And it was actually, a lifeline to get word out to people because I just wasn't in a position to text multiple people asking for prayer. And so I remember just reaching out on Facebook and said, I'm supposed to be going to hospital, but is there anyone that can pray? And thankfully they were, because I look back at the photo of me on stage and I'm thinking, how on earth did I manage to get up on stage and accompany our daughter? And it was only by the grace of God. That's, the power of praying people. That day, I ended up going to emergency after the performance and I spent the day in emergency. And that whole weekend then, I was actually by myself at home because it was our son's birthday. So the day I went to hospital was my son's 18th birthday. And so he was flying out that night with our daughter and he's going to spend the weekend with family. And Adrian was going over the next day. Adrian's my husband and he was going over the next day. And on the Saturday, I woke up thinking, oh yeah, I'm starting to feel better. I really wanted Adrian to be there. I didn't want Jack's birthday to be ruined. And I had friends, making meals and I was eating fine. Roll forward to Monday night and I sent Adrian a message and I said, I just can't do it anymore. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't get home. There was no flights or they were too expensive. The next day he was due to fly in at 10:30 and there was fog. It was winter in Tassie and fog had rolled in. So the flight was delayed and it just kept getting delayed. And I kept holding on. It kept getting delayed. And they finally got home. The ambulance was finally called. It felt like ages, to be honest, till the ambulance arrived. Went into the local hospital where I stayed for about 12 hours. And then they were trying to work out whether I was to be flown or driven to Hobart. The decision had been made. I had to get to Hobart. I didn't want to go. My family's in Launceston. And even though I was born in Hobart, and I knew I've got family, a bit of family there and a couple of friends, I just wanted to stay with them.
You wanted to stay at home where you felt safe.
Exactly. That's exactly right. But I look back on that now, and that's how God intervened. So I was flown down by the Royal Flying Doctors, and that should have rang alarm bells. I should have been like thinking to myself, wow, this is really serious. But in my head, I was thinking, no, thank goodness, I'm actually getting to where I need to be. I don't have to go on the road where it would take 2.5 hours to get there. And yeah, so I had surgery the next day, still oblivious to the seriousness of it. But in all of this, God had actually positioned my husband to be working in that field of surgery a year and a half before, well, a year before. And so he had actually worked with a specialist that was going to be operating on me. So they were able to use medical jargon, which I would never have understood. But he just had this understanding of what was actually going to occur. For him, that's actually, I look back at that and think that would have been really tough for him. Right? It would have been really, really hard. But I'm so thankful that when I asked the question, what's the surgeon like? He said he's one of the best. I knew that between the surgeon and God that I was going to be safe. So the surgery happened. They didn't know what they were going to find. I didn't know that. Well, actually, they might have mentioned that to me, but I was so away in the fairies at the time. I was just not well. And the next day when the surgeon came back to catch up with me and fill me in on stuff, the first thing I said was, when am I going home? Still oblivious. I just had no comprehension how serious it was. And he'd actually said to Adrian 24 hours later, and I actually would have been dead because I was internally bleeding. It hadn't been picked up at the previous hospital. And yeah, I was very close to death. God would never have let me die. I look back on all that now, but at the time, yeah, I just didn't realise. I did not realise that I was that close to death. So there was nothing really to comprehend because I just didn't know. And I guess I always felt safe. I always felt safe in God's arms because I had visions and dreams throughout numerous years of my life. So I never thought that it was going to end right there and then. Yeah.
And that moment is something that a lot of us fear, that getting close to death. But I suppose in some ways it was a blessing that you were a tad oblivious to just how close you'd come. But it seems like it unlocked something for you. And do you think your faith played a big part in how that experience went for you?
Yeah, massively. So I've always had this deep faith, but this just went next level. Absolutely next level. So yeah, the power of praying people, the fact that God was waking people up in the middle of the night with me on their mind. They didn't know why I was on their mind, but they'd just start to pray. And and just the audible prayers that people prayed during that time and looking back and seeing how they were answered as well. But there's a few different things. So I said before that Facebook can be used for good or evil. And, during that time, being able to, once I'd started feeling a little bit better and being able to interact, because I couldn't do any of that in the first few days, I was able to just share what was going on, and I was able to see people commenting and encouraging me in their faith journey. So what I was sharing was actually stirring their faith up as well. But there was actually some incidents that stand out to me. So God's audible voice was like a megaphone. It was like a megaphone in my ear. So I've always been able to sort of hear his voice, but it seriously was just so loud. And there's a couple of things that come to mind. So on the way, I actually went to the cardiac ward because I had went on tachycardia. Is that what it's called? When the heart does something funny. Anyway, so it started beating out of rhythm, and I went down to the cardiac ward, and I couldn't get word out on Facebook. I couldn't get word to my husband, and I just heard God say, "It's just you and me. It's just you and me. Like I was safe." So that was really loud. So I still remember the emotion I felt at the time. There's another instance when I was reaching out for prayers. I was reaching out for people that have the gift in worship, music, to record things. I'd been in the cardiac ward, came back to K9 West, actual ward, the surgery ward, and I was going to reach out again for people to pray. And then I just heard God say, last night you reached out to others. Tonight, let me hold you. And you know how hard hospital beds are?
Unfortunately, yes.
It's very hard. So with that though, when he said, just let me hold you, I flunked back into the hospital bed and it became like a soft, sort of cushion. And I just rested back and I literally felt his arms around me. And being a person who loves music, in order to block out the sounds of the machines and that in the cardiac ward, I would put earplugs in and headphones, to listen to music and just hear the truth, the truth of worship music coming through those, headphones. But that night, I didn't have music in. I just had earplugs, and I heard this amazing sound, and I'm like, that I don't have music playing. And I took them out and I just heard this magnificent sound. It was the most beautiful sound that I'll never forget. I've never heard anything so majestic. And it was this chorus of angels just round my bed. I could see them. And it took days for me to process that though. I was like, did I see them? Yes, I did. But in the moment, I knew exactly what I was hearing, exactly what I was seeing. It's hard to put into words because it was just this supernatural, amazing gift that God had given me in that moment. They were warring for me, they were ministering to me. And I do get emotional when I think about it because the fact that God loves me so much that he did that and he would do that for anyone because he loves us all the same. He just loves us with such a deep, deep love. That this whole experience, his love for me, but knowing that it's for each person, it's just immeasurable. You just can't compare it. And that was amazing. Another audible moment was when you're in hospital, the doctors need to basically give the nurses a heads up when you might be going home. I remember them saying they'll be going home Sunday, and straight away I got Tuesday in my spirit. And I'm like, Tuesday, that's interesting. I wonder if it's going to be Tuesday. So it's just those moments where God would speak amidst the craziness, I guess I could say, that a hospital environment can bring.
Yeah.
Doctors and nurses have the best interests at heart. They want to give you all the information that they can to help you. But I needed to stand truth. I needed to hear God's word. I needed to hear his promises. And that's where the power of prayer, the audible prayers that people pray, and the worship music, and just his voice speaking to me. Yeah, it was massive. It was massive. It really is hard to put into words. Yeah, it was massive.
It's huge and it's powerful. And I love that we're talking about it because let's be honest, faith is one of those taboo topics, right? You don't bring it up at dinner parties. We don't talk about God at work, or some of us do, and here on this show, we definitely go there because I like talking about those things that matter to all of us, but we don't generally bring them up on a day-to-day basis. So I loved how you shared that God was really there for you in those moments. And there's a verse that I love. It's Psalms 34. The Lord's close to the brokenhearted. Now, I know you didn't share that you were brokenhearted, but you were in a really rough spot, but you kept that closeness to you. And a lot of it came through music. So you're a piano teacher. So music has been a big part of your life. And you already shared that you heard music when there wasn't actually any playing.
Yeah.
So how big a part do you think music and your love of music played in your healing? I know it was one way that God showed up for you.
Yeah. Oh, it was massive. As you say, I'm a piano teacher. I've always loved music, but during that time, I was on the flip side of giving music therapy because I was receiving that music therapy from people, but also I had Spotify was playing the worship music, sometimes 24/7, to drown out the anxiety I felt from the painkillers that were sending me to hallucinations and some of those I never wanted to in my life.
My mum, when she was sick, hated some of the painkillers because she said, no, I don't like those things. They make me loopy.
Well, they ask you what you're allergic to, and you can only tell them what you've had experience in taking. So I didn't know, but they did create a lot of anxiety. That was just before I went to the cardiac ward, and I really felt God leading me into saying to the people that I just needed to come off it and get onto more natural stuff because it was really affecting, but music really spoke through that. And I just remember when I left the hospital and I sang the song Holy Forever. Do you know Holy Forever?
It's a great song.
Yeah, and one of the lines is, and the angels cry, holy. And I still remember where I was and how I felt, and my eyes just welled up in tears because I'd seen them for myself. So music just had a whole new meaning. And even the songs that God was giving me after that experience as well, they're just different. Like they're just so different. A lot of the songs beforehand were talking, because my life's been full of a lot of trauma. There's been a lot of traumatic experience making up my life, which I must say in an instant was healed through that supernatural experience. Like I was, at rock bottom when I met God, face to face, basically. But a lot of those songs were emotional, about the burden I was carrying, and I still talked about God's grace and all that, but it's just totally different. Yeah. So it has definitely changed.
And your connection to music's gotten deeper. It's always been the thing that got you through hard times, but now you see even more behind that. That's one of the things I love about music. It really is the language of the soul, and I think it is how God speaks to us, particularly if you are a little on the auditory side and that's how you take in information. Then sometimes you'll hear those little messages in music, or that right song pops into your head at just the minute that you need it.
Yeah, but also when I was playing the worship music, the impact that I played it had on those nurses, patients, anyone who'd come into the hospital there. I just played that the words had an impact as well. Because I do remember a nurse coming in once and I really sensed something special in her. There was just something about her. And I started playing some well-known worship music. I think one was probably Goodness of God. And sure enough, she started humming. I'm like, oh, okay, what's God doing here?
Yeah.
So then the next time she came, because I had her for nearly a whole day, I played a different one, which was deliberately a well-known one. I can't remember what it was now. And she'd start singing. I'm like, oh, you know these songs. So it actually opened up conversation with people as well. And there was so many moments in hospital where God was just leading me to do something, not just in the area of music, but there was many God assignments that he had me on with everybody's and just conversations with nurses, and yeah, it's amazing. Really, it was hard,
He
but it
has a
was
way of
amazing.
putting us where we need to be.
Yeah, and I did have someone say to me, look for opportunities to share Jesus, and I was like, seriously, really feeling sick, and that was probably the last thing that I was thinking about looking out for. But I do believe that this couple kept praying that I look for opportunities to share Jesus, because they definitely showed up, not just through music, but like I said, through these man buddies. That I called them, I had three, and there was he sent them to me for me, but I'm thinking for them too.
I don't believe in coincidences, but sometimes I will call them God incidences. And one thing I know is there is a plan, and things don't happen by accident. Sometimes we go through experiences that we wouldn't wish on anybody, but at the same time, we wouldn't wish for it not to happen because of what that experience brings to us.
Yeah.
So has going through that changed how you now interact and be in the world? So is it different now? You've always given a bit of your heart to your students when you're teaching, but has that shifted and changed as a result of what you went through?
My whole life's changed, and if you asked me to go through it again, I would. Like, I'm not saying it was always easy. Not at all. There was a lot of hard moments. I had to learn to walk again, and that was a shock in itself. But through this whole experience, I now know who I am. I know now without a doubt that I'm a child of God.
That's a great song too.
It is. um, and I
Song that
just
says,
know
I
without
am
a
who you say I am, a child of God.
exactly. And I've sung those words for many years, but yeah, just going. I think I needed to go through this whole ordeal. Like, God was never going to let me die, but yeah, it's opened my eyes to His love and His grace and His mercy big time. Yeah, it has changed my whole outlook, which is a massive thing. knowing who you are, owning who you are, not trying to walk in someone else's footsteps, not living in the world of comparison, because it really does steal your joy. All the wisdom is in the Bible for a reason. But when we know it, when we get that revelation for ourselves, that is when our life can just be totally transformed. And we can start living free of all the chains that, the enemy tries to bind us in. And I know without a doubt the enemy tried to take me out. He tried to take my husband out last year, and then he tried to just, bully me at school with my son, and then this year he tried to take my dad out. And, the enemy's scared, but he's never going to win. I just laugh in his face. He's never going to win. Jesus has already won.
And the other guy can keep fighting, but it's never going to change.
And he will keep fighting. He will keep fighting, but no.
That's it.
I don't own fear like I used to. Like I used to live in anxiety and depression and fear of whatever, and now those feelings still come up, don't get me wrong, but it's like I won't stand in it, like I won't live in it. I choose to, claim the promises. We're not given the spirit of fear, the power, love, sound mind. Yeah. So I'm choosing to own the promises over the lies. Yeah.
I think we all have that wrestle within us and wrestle with God too. We all have those moments where doubt and fear creeps in, and that's okay. But it's okay to visit that place, but you don't have to unpack and stay there. And I think that's partly what hearing of your experience was. Yeah, you hit that rock bottom moment. You were close to being counted out, but then you came back from that, and then now you're sharing the wisdom that brought for you. So if anyone is stuck in that doubt, fear space, what would you say to them?
Look, from a faith point of view, you can, when we don't understand what's going on, we don't need to understand because God's already a step ahead of us. I had a picture a couple of weeks ago of how big God's hands are. And, do you know the song, brings me up to Sunday school days, he's got the whole world in his hands, he's got the whole world. Well, I was driving along and I just had this picture of these massive hands. And I'm like, he seriously does. He seriously has the whole world in his hands. And we're like these tiny little Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, that movie, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? We're like so small.
We're showing our age.
Yeah, probably. But it was just, sometimes we can just get caught up in our own head. And I look back at life and I think, how many times did I take on the role of God? Thinking that was my worry. That was my doubt to actually take ownership of and figure out, rather than releasing it. When we can release it to a God who loves us, to a God who sent his son to die for us, then it just frees us up so much. And we can start living with a lot more peace and hope. Yeah.
And the truth will set you free. And that's being able to sit in that place of hope and belief and trust is what then sets us free to be able to go out and do what it is we're meant to do in the world. Yeah. So thank you for sharing those moments and showing us that doesn't have to be the end. Sometimes it's actually the beginning.
Yeah.
So what's the plan for you now?
Well, so when I was in hospital, I was given the revelation that I was to write a book. Now, I'd already been writing a book. I haven't even finished the first book. And then God gives me the name of the second book. When my family came down for the first time to see me, we had like this brainstorming session, and my husband had a big part in naming the book. And so it's going to be called Half Dead, Not Done Yet. So I've been writing, because I'm not done yet. Like, I guess I was half dead, but I'm definitely not done yet. And so I've been writing. Also, while I was in hospital, God gave me this amazing mountain view. I remember being wheeled back to the ward from the cardiac ward, and I just said to God, please give me a window. Because cardiac ward was very claustrophobic. And sure enough, Mount Wellington, straight out my window, it felt like the biggest window that I'd ever seen, even though they're probably all the same size in the
Yeah.
hospital. And I knew the first song I'd write would be about mountains. And it is. When I look to the mountain, where does my help come from? It comes from God. Yeah. So writing songs, writing book, and yeah, that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm still teaching piano, do homeschooling, being a mum, being a wife, involved at my Southland Lifehouse Family Church, which is just amazing.
And just having a few more God moments in every day, or at least just my guess would be you're noticing them more than you used to. He's always there,
Yeah.
and he's always showing us things, but sometimes we get a bit tunneled vision and don't see everything that's around us until an experience like that makes us open our eyes.
Yeah, and I think I've just always been a very busy person. And I think the enemy can sometimes use busyness to stop us from being still and knowing the things God. And even after the experience, I remember saying to a couple of people, I just want to go back to the experience, like back to Hobart, because it was just such a supernatural experience. And then just recently, I just had the revelation again that it had nothing to do with experience. It's the fact that I was laying everything at his feet and I was spending time with him. That's all he wants us to do, is to spend time with him. And, not just, talking to him, but taking the time to listen to what he wants to say to us, and just looking out for opportunities as well that might come our way. We might be walking down the street and he might just download something, like that person needs this, and you might not know why they need it, but listening to what he's saying and trusting in what he's saying and then acting on it. Yeah.
Believing that you've been given that to do for a reason, that you're the right person to do it. Because sometimes we'll get you should go do this, and it's like, do I have to? And yeah, you do. Because if there's something that God really wants you to do, you're going to end up doing it. So you may as well just save everybody the hassle and go do it the first time he tells you.
It's so true. So when I
That's
was
been
saying
my
before
experience
about,
anyway.
no, that's been my experience too, many times. I think a lot of us do that. But when this person said to me, look for opportunities to share Jesus, and I didn't want to, then when I got my first room buddy, because I was actually by myself for a while, but then I knew being in public hospital, I'd start getting room buddies. She came in and I just found myself straight away just saying, if you want prayer for anything, just let me know. And she was like, oh, that'd be great. I didn't expect that. And we just got chatting. It was probably an hour before we prayed, but it just opened up the lines of communication and broke down barriers. And you just never know the impact that that's going to have on someone. And then she left, and then the next room buddy came in, and I felt God saying it again, and those words came back, look for opportunities to share Jesus. And so I just said to her, the next morning it was, because it was in the middle of the night, she came. Don't think she would want me doing something then. Who knows, though? But I just said, if you want me to pray for you. Well, this lady has become a very good friend of mine. We call each other twins, because I just realised God sent me like an exact replica of me to a degree. There's so much we have in common. She was such an encouragement. She was so full of joy. She actually had faith in God. She loved the TV shows I loved. She loved music. And there was just so many similarities. So by reaching out to her and saying, would you like me to pray for you? Once again, it opened doors. And then the third one came in. And once again, I felt God saying, to ask if she wanted prayer. And yeah, there's just been so many different scenarios where you can choose to be obedient, or you can choose to just step back. And I guess God's challenging me to keep stepping forward even when I hesitate. Yeah, it's a journey, that's for sure.
It is, and we're each on our own. So I want to thank you for sharing all of that with us. Those that are listening, if you're someone of deep faith, no faith, or still figuring it out, I really hope that Robyn's story has given you permission to ask those big questions, and maybe even just to sit with the mystery, to find that quiet space to be still and and maybe hear from God in the way that works for you, because we all get his messages differently. And here on Taboo Talk, we don't give the easy answers, but we hold space for honest ones, and that we are all on a different journey. Now, if this episode moved you, then share it. Tag it with someone who needs to know that they're not alone in their questions. And sometimes the question can even be, is it really God I'm hearing from, or am I going crazy? Could be a little bit of both, but generally it will be, yes, you're hearing from him. But you're not alone in questions or in grief or in challenges that you face, and you're not alone in your comeback from it either. And just in case no one's told you lately, you're worthy, you're seen, and you don't have to have it all together to be loved. Robyn shared it, and I'll share it too. You are loved purely because you are a child of God. And thank you so much for joining us today. We could stay here chatting for hours, but we'll take this opportunity to share Jesus, and I know that both of us will find other places to share him as well. Until next time, I'm Sarah Jordan Ross, and this has been Taboo Talk. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember, your story matters, so share it, because you never know when it's your story that will be what makes the difference to someone else. Bye for now.